Good afternoon and welcome to the July Lunch and Learn. Today's topic is on federal tuition assistance and Army Ignited. Before this webinar starts, let's go over a few housekeeping tips. I've placed all participants on mute. However, as we all know, technology is not always on our side, so please check to make sure you're muted. You may find a copy of the slides under the Files tab of this channel as well as in the comments. You may enter any questions you have throughout the training into the chat window. We will either get to them as they come up or during the Q&A at the end of the training. If you don't have access to the chat window, please raise your hand and we will add you to the team. Once added, you may have to leave and rejoin the meeting. If you're joining as a guest and not accessing this webinar with Army 365, we will not be able to add you to the team. Now please welcome our FTA and CA Program Manager, Miss Rachel Gauthier.
Good afternoon or good morning, everybody. I am Rachel Gauthier. As Ms. Pulaski mentioned, I am the FTA-CA Program Manager up at NGB. And today we're going to talk about federal tuition assistance and Army Ignited. Next slide, please. Our agenda for today, we're going to do an overview of what is FTA, how do you become eligible for it, can you use it with other programs, what are some of the prohibitions and restrictions, what are the military service obligations, what about recoupments, what is the process for requesting FTA, what is a JST or Joint Services Transcript, and then we're going to talk about some Wave 2 FTA and CA policy changes that will go into effect next fiscal year, and I will provide you the points of contact. I just want to also mention that if you have questions during, as Ms. Steph mentioned, you can type them into chat. What I do request though is that if you have a personal question that is just about your account or what you want to do, please save those to the very end. If you have a general question that you know is more for everybody in the field, please ask it at any time, but let's save the personal questions about your account and what you want to do until the very end, and either we can answer it then or I will get you in touch with the right education services specialist who is your education counselor. Next slide, please. So a little bit of an overview about the Federal Tuition Assistance Program. It is a program that you have $4,500 every fiscal year for voluntary off-duty education programs. That usually consists of a maximum of 18 semester hours per fiscal year, and that can pay up to $250 per credit. Or if you're attending a quarter hour school, it's $166 per quarter hour, and clock hour schools, it's only $5.55. What can you pursue? You can use it to pursue up to 130 semester hours of undergraduate work. You can use it for up to 39 semester hours towards a master's degree, or you can use it up to 21 semester hours of either an undergraduate degree or a graduate academic certificate, but you are limited to only one of those per your lifetime. Next slide, please. So what are some basic eligibility? It's pretty easy to be able to use FTA. You just have to be in good standing and not flagged in IPSE. You have to have a CAT card. You don't even any longer have to have completed basic training or AIT, which is amazing. And your Army Ignited account cannot be on hold. So it's pretty easy. As long as you meet these requirements, you may be eligible. Next slide. Once you have created an Army Ignited account and you're ready to actually submit a request for tuition assistance, those TA requests must be submitted and approved in Army Ignited at least 7 days prior to a course start date. You can register anywhere between 7 days and 60 days before your start date starts. You have to submit a degree plan, a personalized degree plan, after you have registered for 2 FTA-funded courses. Usually you can find those online. They're usually your student online account, your degree audit. It's usually on your school's online account once you are logged in. And you must maintain a minimum GPA. For undergraduate degrees, that means a 2.0 after you've completed 15 hours of coursework. For a graduate degree program, you must maintain a 3.0 after 6 credit hours of coursework. Next slide. Can you use it with other programs? Absolutely. What you have to know is that FTA and credentialing assistants, CA, they use the same pot of money. So you have $4,500 in this pot, and you are only allowed to use up to $2,000 per fiscal year for CA, which means you could use 2,000 for CA and you would still have 2,500 for FTA, or you can use all of it as your FTA, but you can combine those two programs. You also can use FTA in conjunction with any state tuition assistance programs, and of course any federal other benefits that you might get, like your Pell Grant, your work study, and of course private scholarships through scholarship agencies and colleges, things like that. So absolutely you can use those together. Some states do require you to apply for federal tuition assistance prior to using their state TA program. But there are some state TA programs that even cover up to a doctorate degree, which we do not do with federal tuition assistance. So at that time, you wouldn't have to apply for FTA first because you wouldn't be eligible to apply. And yes, you can use FTA and your 1606 GI Bill together for the same course as long as you are enrolled half-time or more. Okay, so yes, you can use it with your GI Bill for the same classes as long as you're taking more than half-time. And then can you use with other GI Bills, for example, Montgomery GI Bill, the original Montgomery GI Bill, and the post 9/11 GI Bill? Yes, but it cannot exceed 100% of tuition cost. So they're not going to give you an overpayment of either program. But for example, if you're only at say 50% of post 9/11, then yes, you can use FTA to help, offset that other portion that is not covered by GI Bill. Next slide, please. What are some prohibitions and restrictions? One, the school that you want to attend must have signed the DoD MOU and be listed in Army Ignited. So there are definitely schools out there that, have not agreed to the DoD MOU rules and regulations and are not in Army Ignited. So obviously we will not be able to pay any tuition towards those schools. FTA does only pay for tuition. It does not pay for fees, which include, lab fees, enrollment fees, parking fees, gym fees, all of those other fees that the school can charge. We will only pay for tuition. FTA is not authorized for lower or lateral degrees. So if you already have a bachelor's degree, we are not going to pay for an associate's degree or another bachelor's degree. You have to be working towards something higher than what you currently hold. But we are not authorized to pay for any first professional degrees. This is your doctorate level, including, a Juris Doctorate. Even though there's not a master's for a law degree, we can't skip that and pay for a doctorate, degree level. FTA will not pay for a double major. Again, you can only claim one major in Army Ignited, plus you're limited to only 130 credits of undergraduate degree, and a lot of double majors obviously have, a whole nother degree's worth of credits for that major. So no, you are limited to one major and 130 credits. And then soldiers cannot be receiving reimbursement from ROTC or Green to Gold scholarships. And this includes if you are an ROTC cadet and you have chosen the room and board option, we still cannot pay for your tuition because you are still receiving an ROTC scholarship, whether you choose to have it towards tuition and fees or room and board. Either way, you would not be eligible to use FTA if receiving any ROTC scholarship. Next slide. So a military service obligation, do you owe more time if you take advantage of federal tuition assistance? For enlisted soldiers, you must have at least 14 or more, actually I think it's 15 days because it's actually the more part of it. I've seen soldiers who have exactly 14 days left, after their last course ends and it told them they couldn't apply for tuition assistance. So I think you actually have to have 15 days remaining to complete all courses before separating. So enlisted, you just have to stay in a little bit past when your last course ends. Now, for officers, on the other hand, you actually do owe a service obligation. If you're a traditional drilling M-Day soldier, then you would actually owe a 4-year service obligation after the last day of the course. But if you are an activated officer, whether that's an AGR status or you're deployed during the time that you're going to take a class, then you would be subject to a 2-year service obligation after the last day of the course. And again, your service obligation is based on your status the day that the class starts. So, again, if you're deployed or if you're on AGR status when that course starts, then that's what would determine your 2-year versus 4-year service obligation. Next slide. Recoupment. So, of course, the Army is investing in you and they want to see you succeed. So, there are instances that you can be recouped. And one of those, of course, is if you receive a failing grade in a course, then the Army is going to get their money back. So, for an undergraduate degree, associates, a bachelor's, and or an undergrad certificate, if you get a D or an F, then you would have to pay that back. Now, for a graduate degree, it's even stricter. If you get a C, a D, or an F for a graduate degree, the Army considers that not passing. Even if your school considers it passing, the whole C's get degrees, saying the Army doesn't consider that passing for graduate level degrees, and you would have to pay that back. I'm going to finish this slide and then I'll answer the question that's in the chat. So if you receive an incomplete for a course and you do not complete those requirements within 180 days, then the Army would recoup you for that class. But you do have 180 days to hopefully finish those requirements to receive a passing grade for a course that maybe you needed an incomplete in at the time. If you withdraw from a course without an approved recoupment waiver, and I'm going to discuss a recoupment waiver. A recoupment waiver could be if you needed to get out of a course because of an unexpected military requirement. For example, let's say you get a last-minute schooling date, or let's say you get added to a deployment after you've already registered, for classes. If you, even for a hardship, withdrawal, for example, let's say you were hospitalized or have had a death in the family or something that has caused you the inability to complete your course during that time frame, you do have an option of submitting a recoupment waiver. And that waiver, just, says the reason why you need it. It has to be signed by your commander saying that they agree that this is a legitimate reason why you maybe need to be withdrawn from this class. And then the Army will waive your recoupment for that class. But the problem with this is that the recoupment waiver is only eligible for W grades, which means if you were in this class with the school and you didn't pass it, they gave you a D or an F, you would have to discuss with your school to be able to get that changed to a W so that you can submit a recoupment waiver. So again, recoupment waivers are only for W grades, not for failing grades. And then, of course, you would be recouped if you were an officer and you did not complete your 2-year or 4-year service obligation. And one little notation down there is that recoupment waivers must be submitted within 30 days of a W grade being posted by your academic institution into Army Ignited. So there is a very tight window there. If you know that you are going to submit a recoupment waiver, you need to get the paperwork done and submit it within 30 days of that grade being posted. Now, I did have a question in chat asking if you already have a military service obligation, does this add onto it or is it concurrent? And it is concurrent. So yes, if you are already serving, a 4-year obligation for, let's say, ROTC, scholarship, after you've already commissioned, and or TEB or any other reason that you have a current service obligation, FTA runs concurrent. Another question was, does the DoD MOU expire mid-FY? Yes, the DoD MOU is only a 5-year signature for each academic institution, and it is set on whatever day it was approved in the system. It's not like, September 1st for all academic institutions. It is whatever date was signed. So it's every 5 years. And you can go to the DoD MOU currently the website is dodmou.com. You can go there and see what date the institution signed it and when it's going to expire, all that fun stuff. And so it's 5 years from whatever date it was signed. And so, Mr. Aldridge, get with me offline and, we can look and figure out a little bit more information about that specific school. Every once in a while, there can be an issue between DoD MOU and Army Ignited, and sometimes it's just a touch point that needs to happen. So get with me offline and we will work that specific school issue. Next slide, please. All right, so what is the process of using FTA? The very first thing that we recommend all of you soldiers do is to contact your state's education services specialist for counseling and information on how to best use all of your benefits. Because remember, you have FTA, you have CA, you have state TA, you have GI Bill. You have a lot of different options for using different benefits. And there's some benefits that, definitely outweigh others when it comes to whatever specific degree, credential, program that you want to use. So we really recommend that all of you get some educational counseling. And also could help if you are a soldier that just doesn't quite know what they want to do. You don't know what you want to be when you grow up yet, or you don't know what degree avenue you need to take for a specific job that you might be interested in. And those education services specialists are there to help counsel you, to help you figure out. They can show you interest inventories, which we'll talk about in a second too, to help you figure out maybe what you want to do. But the best thing that you need to use them for is to figure out what benefits you should use. There are some amazing state TA programs out there, and FTA can only maybe pay for a portion of your school. That you want to make sure that you are able to pursue an education without needing to incur a lot of debt. That's the one thing we want soldiers to avoid at all costs is a debt for their education. So let's figure out how we can get you the most schooling for the littlest cost out of your pocket. Okay, so talk to your education office in your home state. I know that there's a lot of folks on the call from NGB right now, but NGB is nobody's home state. Most people who are up at NGB are from other states and are assigned at NGB. It's wherever your home state is that you fall as, your typical kind of guardsman, and you would still be eligible for those state TA programs. So make sure you're familiar with what your state currently offers for you. Step 2 in the FTA process, after you've had your counseling appointment with your counselor, the next step is to actually create, your log into your Army Ignited account, and you can complete Army Ignited 101 training. And that can be done actually via slide deck here in the channel. Here in our public Teams channel, we have a slide deck for the Army Ignited 101 training, and it can actually be, and I meant to insert the actual YouTube link there, which I did not do, but maybe Steph can put it in the chat box for us. You can actually do Army Ignited 101 training via watching a YouTube video, and just follow the directions that the YouTube tells you to do at the end to tell us that you have completed Army Ignited 101 training. The next step would be to complete Career Path Decide or Cooter Journey. I'm going to show you a couple slides on those, but those are interest inventories. Those are going to kind of ask you, questions about what are you interested in doing? What do you want to study? And it's going to help, kind of maybe shape some different pathways for you with degrees and possible credentials, that kind of stuff. It can kind of help guide you to a major decision. Step 4, well, and I kind of said it more like after, around step 1 or step 2, sorry, is go into Army Ignited and actually CAC log in. Make sure that you can get logged in to the Army Ignited system. When you're ready and you've chosen what school you want to go to and what degree program you want to pursue, you're going to go ahead and click on the Create Education Goal. And at that time, it's going to ask you to put in the school name, the degree name, some of your personal information, your address, your phone numbers, your email addresses. Those are really, really important to actually put in a correct personal email address. You can use your Army email address, and especially if you're full-time staff and you're always checking, your Outlook email. But we do recommend putting in a good personal email too, just because those are sometimes the ways that the counselors are going to reach out to you is through email. They can send you tutorials and different things about the Army Ignited system. So we do recommend that you have all of your contact information updated. And Ms. Albrecht put in the YouTube link for the Army Ignited 101 training. If you haven't done that yet, then that's a great option to complete that. Next slide, please. So here's what Career Path Decide looks like. There's actually a link in Army Ignited directly to Career Path Decide. Once you go to Career Path Decide, this is kind of what the soldier screen looks like. You have 4 very quick interest inventories about skills, lifestyle, interest, and values. And then it kind of spits you out a result page, and then you can actually upload that result directly to Army Ignited by following those instructions on the screen. If instead you decide to use Cooter Journey, which will be on the next slide, where it says you can upload Career Path Decide results, you can also upload your 1-page summary from Cooter Journey to this page. So those are 2 different options. You can use either one as a soldier, but you do have to use one of them before your education goal can be approved and/or before you can actually request tuition assistance for the first time. Next slide, please. So these are the Cooter Journey steps to complete it. You would go to dantes.mil/Cooter. You sign up for an account. Once logged in, you take the assessments. There's multiple assessments, but the one we're most concerned about is the career interest assessment. So you would complete that. And again, we recommend that you guys really thoughtfully think about these as you're taking them. Don't just rush through and, select A for everything, because you're not going to get very good personalized results to you. And again, if you're taking the time to think about going to school, then you need to take it seriously and, really think about what it is that you want to do before, locking into this, type of program. So we really do recommend that you take these seriously, take the time to complete them right. And then again, you can upload that directly to Army Ignited. And then again, we encourage you at all times to engage with your counselor to make sure that you're on the right track. I got a question in chat that says, can you use FTA with state tuition assistance? This means you can couple FTA with Florida's EDD. So this is why I say I would like you to reach out specifically to a Florida counselor. I'm not sure if Miss Monica is online today. She is the ESS for Florida, but for many states, yes, you can combine both. It depends though, obviously, generally, most programs aren't going to pay more than 100%. There are some out there that do, and you can actually get some money back in your pocket. So that's why I say not everybody. But I am not, unfortunately, completely spun up on all 54 states and territories state TA program. So I can't specifically say, exactly what would be covered with Florida, but I will give you the contact information for Miss Monica, who is your ESS in Florida, and she would tell you exactly how you can use both programs. But generally, yes, you can use both FTA and state TA in combination. And so, but that's why I say reach out specifically to each counselor in each of the 54 states and territories, because every state TA program is different. But I will get you that contact information, or one of my fellow ESSs on the call will get you that information. All right, so next I want to talk a little bit about Joint Services Transcript. As a soldier, every single one of you right now has a JST, a Joint Services Transcript. This is a military transcript that has all of your training and military experience listed on it. And you can get college credits for things that you have done in the military. The American Council on Education evaluates all of the military training records, and they recommend college credit. Now, it's completely up to each school and university to determine how many of those recommended credits they are going to accept. I have found, though, that generally if you are doing a degree, for example, let's say you're an MP and yet you want to do a criminal justice degree, I do find that if your degree is aligned with your MOS, many schools are more apt to give you additional credits. Now, if you are, of course, an 11 Bravo and you are, our infantry guy, but you want to do a very specialized, computer, cyber degree type of thing, you might get some elective credits and you might get some PE credits, that kind of stuff, but there's not a lot of alignment with your military school and, say that specific degree. But some schools, tout themselves as being military friendly. And so we really would hope that a lot of schools will give you at least additional elective credits for any of the courses and programs that you have on your JST. And again, the further up in rank you go, of course, the more military schooling and training that you will have attended. And I see a lot more credits being given for management and leadership and things like that the further you advance in your degree. But the most important thing is any credit that is awarded towards your degree means less time in the classroom, means less time and less money that you have to spend in college if they're going to give you free credits for what you've already done. So, you can go to the you can even Google Joint Services Transcript. It's going to take you to the JST website, which I believe I have on the next slide, and you can request an official JST be sent to your college free of charge. It doesn't cost any money to have this transcript sent directly to your school, and hopefully you are given, some additional college credits. Go ahead and go to the next slide, and I'll show you what a sample JST looks like. So this is a soldier's, JST, and it shows, what school they went to basic combat training. So those credits right there that say 2 semester hour, 1 semester hour in marksmanship, 1 semester hour in land nav, 1 semester hour for physical fitness, those are the credits being recommended to your college. And so colleges, like I said, have the option to accept or deny some of these credits. But generally, if you're going to a school that, says they're military friendly, hopefully they're going to give you some credits. Even like I said, if it's a PE credit, this person obviously went to AIT and it looks like maybe for cyber because they have some computer troubleshooting, electronic systems, network essentials. Those may very well be credited towards a cyber degree of some sort. So like I said, every single one of you soldiers on this call have a JST. So I do recommend you go to the website. Here's the website right there. Pull your JST and digitally send it to a college, especially if you are already attending a college, to see if you can get those free credits towards your degree. Any questions about that, please stick it in chat. Next slide, please. So we do have some possible some for sure wave 2 policies. We just don't know the exact date of when these are going to go into effect. Right now, these wave 2 policy changes I don't know if any of you know, but we just had Wave 1 policy change December of last year. And that is where we bumped up tuition assistance, actually went from 16 credits up to 18 credits. We went from $4,000 up to $4,500. Those were the big changes for federal tuition assistance. There was a lot more changes that went into the credentialing side of things, which will be discussed on next month's Lunch and Learn. But for Wave 2 changes that are still going to be effect, we are waiting for the new AR 621-5 to be published. And right now they are estimating that this will take place in November of 2025. So be sure to be on the lookout for when the new AR is published. But what changes will happen for federal tuition assistance? The big one is that it will require command involvement to approve soldiers' TA and CA requests in the Army Ignited system. We don't know how that's going to look yet, and we will have tons of training on the topic once it gets closer to being implemented. But another big change will be that soldiers will be suspended from using TA and CA for 12 months if the soldier has 2 recoupments within the same FY, meaning if a soldier fails 2 courses, fails or withdrawals with recoupment for 2 classes within the same fiscal year, they will be suspended from using the program for an additional 12 months. And then the last one is completely CA, and that commissioned officers will no longer be eligible for CA. But again, that's not in effect right now. So if you are an officer interested in CA, be taking advantage of the program right now. But again, that's going to be covered in next month's CA Lunch and Learn that's taking place in August. So again, these are future changes that are coming. Now, if you need to know who your point of contact is for education counseling, here's a couple ways that you can figure that out. One is you can log into Army Ignited. Once you're logged in, you can click on Education Center, and that will tell you who your assigned Ed Center POC is. Each state has an education services specialist, ESS, and/or an ESO that are in those education offices to assist you with federal tuition assistance, Army Ignited, and just general educational counseling. And in Army Ignited, there are tutorials that will walk you through all of these processes step by step. And you can find those under the link that says Global Resources. Again, there's tutorials for almost everything within the Army Ignited system. Another way you can find out who your state education services officer is you can go to nationalguard.com /select your state, and that will give you your POC in the state information. Had another question in chat. If a soldier has used all 4,500 FTA for the current FY, when would the soldier be able to apply for FTA for 26? So credits always reset on October 1st. October 1st is the beginning of each new fiscal year, and that is when all money and credits is refreshed within the Army Ignited system. So October 1st. So you can, let's say you've used all of your fiscal year 25 funds right now, but you have a course that starts October 10th, then you can apply before October 1st for a date starting after October 1st, because your credits will automatically refresh on 1 October. So you can go ahead and get registered for those classes when you're within 60 days of that next start date, and it will know that it's going to pull out of the fiscal year 26 pot. Okay. Great question. Next slide. We have tons of social media, different avenues for you to get great education information. You can find us on Facebook, you can find us on Instagram, you can find us on Twitter, LinkedIn. We've got a great YouTube channel that has tons of information, which is also where you can find that Army Ignited 101 training that is required for all soldiers who want to use FTA. And so please, bookmark some of these great resources and get the information out there. And especially if you are a leader of soldiers, I see a lot of majors on the call and some colonels on the call, which means you have a lot of soldiers beneath you in your command. Please make sure that all of your soldiers are tracking these benefits, know where to find this information, put this information out, and let's help educate, our entire force. We need your help to make sure that our lowest soldiers out there, lowest ranked soldiers, know about these programs and these benefits. Next slide. Which is just all about your questions. So please, if you have questions about any of the FTA program, Army Ignited questions, just so you are tracking, our next month webinar is on Tuesday, August 12th, and it is on credentialing assistance. We will actually have the people from the Army Cool Counseling Cell and Miss Sophia Sweeney, who's up at it's called ACAPO, the Army Credentialing Assistance Program Office, will be providing that specific briefing. And so that will be a great time to come and ask any questions that you have specifically about credentialing assistance. And again, these Lunch and Learns happen the second Tuesday of every month. And so our next one is all about credentialing assistance and will be on Tuesday, August 12th, same time, same place. But what other questions do you have for me today about federal tuition? So I got another question. A service member plans to extend contract within the next 30 days, but Army Ignited will not accept schedule due to ETS within 90 days. Should service member wait, will funds be available? So if their ETS is within 90 days, I guess it's all about those last 14 days. If the course goes beyond that, they need to get their extension in as soon as possible. There's nothing we can do. There's no exception to policy. Unfortunately, IPSA has to be completely correct for a soldier to be able to get registered into the system with all, correct ETS dates, unit changes, all that kind of fun stuff. IPSA has to be correct, and there's no exception to policy when it comes to that. So my recommendation, obviously, is to get their IPSA corrected as soon as possible with their extension paperwork, and hopefully that will all be done prior to the 7 days before the start date. If it's not completed before the 7 days before the start date, well, then they will have missed their opportunity to register for that current semester, whatever that semester is, and they would have to wait until the next semester to apply. But no, we can't backdate anything. There's no exception to policy when it comes to IPSA issues and, correct information being in that system. And so, if you've got additional questions or if that soldier has additional questions, I do recommend that you reach out to your specific state education office, because there may be other avenues like state TA and stuff that has different deadlines than what FTA has. A question about command involvement functionality will impede processing of FTA. I don't see the positive benefits, so neither do we. Many commanders are MDay. Yeah, we know this will result in a catch-22 for soldier that was promised tuition. We get this. This is our biggest complaint with these new changes that are going into effect. We in the Guard and the Reserve completely non-concurred on this involvement. We brought up all of the same arguments that you just brought up in your post, saying this is going to hurt us. The blessing is that they are going to allow us to the commander can designate somebody in the system. It doesn't have to be the actual commander themselves. They can designate a full-time staff member for their unit who can be the command involvement. So again, we're going to have a lot of training on this before that actual involvement is instituted. And so we will definitely have more answers at that time. The soldier actually puts in who their command involvement person is. They put in the email in Army Ignited. And so there will be a lot of training that will take place, with units, who that full-time staff member is that is responsible for that. So again, there's still a lot more training with it, but yes, we have all the same concerns. we don't know how this is going to hinder or harm our program and our soldiers, but we definitely are going to be fighting for what is right and trying to see how we can minimize the damage to the program and making sure that soldiers do get the benefit that we you can't say it was promised. We got to remember the FTA and CA are benefits. They're not entitlements. GI Bill is an entitlement. It's law that you have to have it. FTA is just a benefit. It can technically go away at any time and is not necessarily actually promised to soldiers. But obviously we want to make it as easy as possible, so we will do a lot of training on this. I will probably be offering a lot more of these lunch and learn type of things to educate soldiers on the new process once we figure out more about what that looks like. Okay. Next question. A possible solution would be to allow FTA to be requested against courses that have already started. Yeah, unfortunately, that's probably not going to happen. FTA always, and it's been a rule since its inception that it always has to be approved prior to the start date. It is not something that they ever do reimbursements for or after the fact. There are some occasional ETP reasons, usually system error, academic institution error, or counselor error, but those are few and far between and will not likely be eligible for this command involvement piece. But again, more information to come on that as it gets closer to inception. It's great that it will allow the soldier to input the information. That way soldiers who are in RSP and not knowing who their organic unit is, yes, that is true. And that is a good thing about, the command involvement, like I said, will be soldier initiated, and a lot more training is going to go out to the field, to the commands, to full-time staff, that kind of stuff. So again, more to follow on that as we learn more up at NGB. Again, these are decisions made way above our head, and we just have to fall in line and implement what is put out to us. So thank you for the great questions. Any other questions? All right, I am not hearing any other questions. So again, I do strongly recommend that any soldiers out there wanting to use any of our programs, reach out to your assigned education staff, get some education counseling. Again, remember, timelines are different for every program. FTA has to be done beforehand. There's many state TA programs that you can, register for it after the term has already started. So please become familiar with what is available to you, what your options are, what state programs are out there. This is definitely one of many educational benefits that you have and one of many opportunities that you have to further your education and, get degrees and certificates that you are passionate about. We love to see soldiers take advantage and become more educated. So that's all I have for you guys today. Thank you, and I hope you guys have a great afternoon.